Hi everyone, and welcome back to Salesforce Mojo. Today we're going to be talking about how to set up product visibility in Commerce Cloud. Now this is going to be an interesting conversation for us because products, of course, are the center of the storefront, and as such, there needs to be a lot of customization with products. Some products need to be visible for some customers, some need to be visible for other customers. Pricing is a consideration here. How do we do discounting? How do we really fine-tune how products are shown to our end users? So that's what we're going to be discussing today. As we go throughout this, if you like the content, please like and give me any comments down below, and let's dive in. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about real quick before we dive into the content here is talk a little bit about pricing and access strategy. So this really comes down to what products can you see and what's the amount for those products. Well, with Salesforce, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of skin this here, but the three most common ways that Salesforce talks about, and if you're kind of going into setting up B2B commerce, you'll probably have heard a little bit about it. Those three ways are buyer tiers, buyer specific, and product specific. So let me talk a little bit about each one of these for a second. So buyer tiers is pretty common, but it's the concept of silver, gold, platinum type of tiers, and based on the tier, you either can see different levels of the product or you get different prices for those products. So pretty common strategy. We're actually going to be talking more about the buyer tiers today because that's pretty common, so I thought it would be helpful for us to really dive in and show you how to set that up. The second way here is buyer specific. Now this is a little more complicated because when you set up buyer specific buyer groups, and we'll get to kind of what a buyer group is in a minute, it requires a little more data setup and a little more intervention as you kind of continue to set up your accounts, but it's really a good strategy because it maximizes your profit, meaning that it's basically contract pricing per account or per small groupings of accounts. So very effective. The last one is product-specific entitlements or access strategy. And this gives you the ability to restrict access based on a specific contract or specific thing about the account, and really gives you a lot of fine-grained detail, but also with a trade-off that it takes a lot to set up. So one of the things I wanted to call out here, and it's kind of set up at the top, it's really, really important and really advised to understand how you plan to set up your buyers and your products before you begin. And this will really outline the rest of your storefront and really make sure it's easy to show the right products to the right users. Now, before we go too far into the actual examples here and the use case we'll go through today to give a real life example, I wanted to go through a quick definition of the key areas here. And this is the image that we looked at earlier on this page. I just blew it up so that we could see it a little bit better here. But it's really important to understand the different mechanisms or controls we have over products and prices before we really dive in. So the first thing I wanted to explain in a little more detail was buyer groups. And so you can see buyer groups here on the right-hand side. A quick explanation of buyer groups is a buyer group is a collection of price books, members, which are also referred to as accounts or vice versa there, entitlements of products, so what products that buyer group should be able to see, and which store has access to this buyer group. So think of it almost as like this, top level collection of all the things you need to be able to see the product and says who should see that product. So there actually are two kind of different levels there. There's the buyer group, which is kind of one layer of abstraction away. And there's the buyer group members, which is the actual account, right? Like if we have Fred's Repair Shop, Fred's Repair Shop is going to be a buyer group member of a specific buyer group. And that's really going to depend on how you set up your buyer strategy, on what group they're a part of, but that's kind of how that relationship works. Next to buyer groups, we can see entitlement policies. So entitlement policies are really important here. They allow us to give visibility access to specific products to buyer groups. So you can see that the entitlement policy links directly to products. So as we add products to the entitlement policy, and that entitlement policy is connected to a buyer group, anyone in that buyer group that's entitled to that policy will see all the products associated to that entitlement. Last thing here is the price books. You may be familiar with price books. Price books are basically a series of prices for all the products associated to that price book, and you can have multiple different price books, based on the buyer groups and all the other factors here. Now, there's a lot of information, and it's going to make a little more sense as we get into it. But before we dive into actually configuring, let's go back up and talk a little bit about what we're trying to set up at the end of the day here. Okay, one last slide before we really get into it. So I did a little bit of pre-work here just so that you guys didn't have to watch me click around and have things load and everything. But before we go too far into any of the other videos we have planned here, we wanted to set up kind of a demo brand that we can use throughout the series and kind of add to incrementally as we go through the videos. That brand we call Tiny Homes. So basically Tiny Homes is a mobile producer of tiny homes. And they sell B2B, they sell B2B2C, and they sell B2C. In the situations we'll be talking about today, it's more about the B2B interaction there. But I kind of wanted to give you that background first. The second thing is on the left-hand side, you can see that we have kind of two asks from Tiny Homes as we're setting up kind of their storefront here. First one is we need the ability to show specific products to groups of accounts. And we need the ability to price products based on those groupings and also provide quantity-based pricing or quantity-based discounting. I phrase them that way because, if you're familiar with the space and you're trying to, get things working in a storefront, you'll probably phrase it this way. You're probably not as familiar with like the buyer groups and entitlement policy and price books concepts of Salesforce yet. So this is kind of the normal speak of what people ask for. And on the right-hand side, you can see that we've done a little bit of work to set up the what this actually will look like in Salesforce as we set this up. So at this time, we're going to set up two different tiers. One's a platinum tier and one's a gold tier. The platinum tier for today will have 2 members, and the gold will have 2 members. You can kind of see the names inside of the buyer group members. And then you can see that each one of them has their own price book and entitlement policy. And that basically gives us the ability to say, okay, so for platinum buyers, they get access to X, Y, and Z products at this price. And the gold buyers get access to A, B, C, and X products at these prices. And so you can have a little bit of overlap here between your products, but you do get finer control over prices and access levels there. Okay, so with all that being said, let's jump right into it. Okay, you can see that we're in our new store, Tiny Homes here. Let's go into Products Workspace, and you'll notice that we don't have any products. We actually do have products loaded in here, but they're not showing up in our workspace, which may be wondering, why is that? Well, that's because they haven't been associated to the store in any means yet. We basically just created brand new products, didn't do any attachments, and that's why they're not showing up here. So before we get into that, we're first going to set up our buyer groups. Let's go down into Customers. And we can see that we have our default buyer group. This is the Tiny Homes buyer group. That's fine. We can leave that there. That's kind of our fallback. But we do want to create 2 new ones. So we're going to create Platinum. And we're going to create Gold. And let's click Save here. And we'll go back to our customer workspace and refresh. And you'll again notice that they didn't show up. That's again because they weren't associated to the store yet. So one of the first things we need to do is we need to go over here and we need to find our buyer groups. And if you don't see that on the list here, you may have to go into Edit, Add More, and then let's find our buyer groups. And let's add it to our navigation item. All right, so we'll go down to buyer groups here, and you can see that we have our 2 new buyer groups. Let's dive into Platinum first. And this is actually a really good way of understanding how all these objects are connected. I like going over to the related list here and trying to just picture, what are the records that I need to create to kind of interconnect everything together. So one of the first things we're going to do is just assign it to our store. All right, we've done that. Now we're going to go back to our buyer groups and the gold member. And let's also assign this one to our store as well. And so now if we close out of both of these and go back to our customer workspace and refresh, now they show up here. Great, so now we can actually come here and find them really easily, and we don't have to worry about going over to other tabs and whatnot. Okay, so now if we go back to the concept of, how do I get my accounts or my what they call buyer group members to be associated to these buyer groups, there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can either go into one of the records here, go to related, and then add a member and then find the account. You could do that. It's pretty easy to kind of click through those records, but they give you a nice customer tab up here, which gives you the ability to select multiple of these customers. Let's say we wanted to assign our platinum buyers first. So we had said that was Jill's Outdoor Venture, I think, and it was Renovations, and we're going to assign these to a buyer group here, to the platinum members, and save. And that'll automatically create all the records for us behind the scenes, and you can see that they're now associated. And then we're going to assign our Tiny Homes Accessories and Fred's Rentals to our gold members. So now we've done all the association. So now if I log in with Tiny Homes Accessories, basically it's going to see everything that the gold members buyer group has access to see, which right now is nothing. So that's going to be the next thing we're going to go solve here. All right, we're back in our home tab now. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the rest of the records we need to get created. So I like to create the entitlement policies next, and we're going to create two. Let's just open this all up so you can see everything. We only have two right now. We have the one that was automatically created from the quick start script, and then we have the one that was created for tiny homes. When you create a new storefront, it automatically gets this all access entitlement policy as a fallback or a default. So we're going to create two new ones. We're going to call this the platinum policy. Okay, and then we're going to mark this as active. And then you can see that it gives you two capabilities down here to say, with this entitlement policy, are they allowed to see the products that are in the entitlement? So yes, we do want that. And are they allowed to see the prices in the catalog? Yes, we also want that. I'm going to copy this because we're going to do the same thing for the gold policy. And let's just replace this here, and we're going to do the same setup. And once we've done that, we now have two brand spanking new policies. The last thing we're going to do here is we're going to go into price books, which might not be in our menu. So let's go add that. Okay. You can do that by going over to price books. The other way I think you can do this is going into pricing. And then, yeah, you can create new price books over here as well. So we'll do it here since we're already here. So we're going to create one for platinum. And we're going to mark this as active. And we will do the same with gold. Mark it as active. And all right, we're good to go. We have all of our records set up. So now we've gone through, we've created our buyer group. We've created buyer group members for the right accounts associated to the buyer groups. We've now created the entitlement policies and the price books. So the last thing we need to do before we can finish up here is we need to go back to our customer workspace and go to our platinum buyer group here. And we need to associate those two new records we created with the right buyer group. So we're going to assign the the platinum price book to the platinum member buyer group. We're going to mark that as active. Now you may be wondering what this priority is here. So let's save this record. Before we do gold, let's hop over to tiny homes. And if we go into administration under general settings, there's a couple of settings here that we can kind of toggle around. This first one right here, I should say the second one under pricing is called pricing strategy. Now, if you hover over, it shows you that there's really two options. You can either do best price or you can do highest priority. So if we open it up, it's also a drop down right here. By default, it is best price, which means if one is $8 for a product and another one's $20, it's always going to show you the $8 because that's the best price. But in some cases, you may have a more complex pricing strategy and you may want to change this to priority price so that you could say, even if $8 is less, the second price book that has the $20 is higher priority, so you should always show the $20. So you do have that capability to kind of come in here and make that modification. That is a global change though, so you want to be really careful with changing that pricing strategy. All right, so we just did that for our price book. We're going to come in here and attach our entitlement policy now for Platinum. And we're good to go. We can see that there's at least one record in every single one of these related lists, which is what we need. We'll come over to Gold. We'll quickly do the same thing here. Assign the price book for Gold. Market is active. And we'll do the same thing for the entitlement policy real quick. Okay, so we are cooking with gas now. So we have both of those set up with all the records they need, but we haven't done anything with products yet. So that's where we're going to go next. All right, let's go over and find our products now. Let's see if it's in our list here, and I don't believe it is. So we're going to add this to our list as we go throughout this and we find things that aren't on here. That would be handy. So we'll come in here and we're going to add products. And the reason we're coming over here is because these few products that we added earlier aren't associated to any store right now, so it'll be really hard to find unless we go directly to products. It also looks like we don't have a all list view, so let's go quickly create that and just get all products in here. Looks good. We'll pin that real quick, and we can see that now we can see all of our products. So I'm just going to quickly come back into here and slap created date on here so I could just filter down to the ones I created today. Okay, great. So I created these. You can see 4 records here today, and I want to assign these to different buyer groups and entitlement policies. All right, so we're on a new product, oak cabinet doors, and one of the first things we're going to do here is assign it to the entitlement policy. So we can do that by hovering over the Commerce Entitlement Policy, clicking Assign, and then we're going to assign this one to the Platinum Entitlement Policy. Once we've done that, we'll close out of this record here, and we can now see that's showing up. While we're here, we might as well add a category, so we'll go ahead and assign that, and we're going to assign it to the Products Tiny Home and Catalog, which is the default one, and we'll click Save. So let's just double check that that's actually going to work for us okay. So we've now added those 2 areas there, and we're going to come back to our Tiny Homes storefront or store workspace, and we'll come over to Products, and we now should see, yep, one product showing up correctly for us, which is great. Okay, so the way that we're going to break this up is the oak cabinet door, the silver kitchen sink, and the feather river doors are all going to be platinum products. However, we do want a couple products for our gold members, so we're going to assign the gold members the window and also the door, and so we'll be able to see kind of an overlap here. So let's go ahead and set those up. We'll go into our silver sink. We're going to add a category again, add it to product here, and then we'll also add an entitlement policy to the platinum. And we'll come back and we'll do the next one, which is river doors here. This is the one that we want assigned to both. So category remains the same because it's going to show up in the same place regardless. But the entitlement policies do matter. So we're going to come over here and we're going to assign this first to the platinum policy, and secondly to the gold policy. Okay, so I kind of went through that really quick, but you can see now we're on the river, the feather river doors. That's a tongue twister right there. And you can see that we now have 2 entitlement policies. So this is kind of where you start to get into the one-to-many relationship with these entitlement policies and products. It's not just a one product can associate to one entitlement. It allows you to have more than one, so it's really flexible that way. All right, so we got that done. I think there's one more product we're missing, which is the window. And window is only going to be accessible to our gold members. So we'll give it a category first, and then we will go into entitlement policy and give it to only the gold members. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to associate our products with the right price books. Because the order we kind of did this in, having the products in here before we had the price books, it's a little bit weird because typically it would ask you in kind of this initial product setup right here, what category, buyer group, price books, and all that you want to set up. But we're kind of trying to show you the data behind it. So we're going to go into price books, and we're going to first start with our platinum. All right, so now that we're here, we're going to come over into add products, and the first thing we're going to do is add oak cabinet doors, and let's also add our silver kitchen sink and our feather river doors. And we'll go to our next screen here, and this gives us the ability to add more than one at a time, so that's pretty handy here. But we'll add the different prices we expect for our platinum members to have. So these are our better members, and so we want to have maybe a slightly discounted price here. So let's say that the standard price is $100. That is one cheap door right there. But for the platinum members is $90. And sink looks like it was $100 too. Maybe we can't give quite as good of a discount, so this is a $95. And these feather river doors, so I think this is actually a front door, is $1,000. So we're going to give it a $900 price for the platinum members. And we're going to click save there. And now we have those price book entries created. We'll go back into our price book, go to gold, and add the ones for gold members. And these are the window, which is only specifically for the gold, but also the feather door. So we'll go over here in the next. The feather door, we got to give them, it's got to be $1,000, so we got to have that be list price. The vinyl window here, maybe we can give a couple dollars off, so it's $95. So let's go ahead and click save there, and now that we have that all saved, we should be able to see everything properly in our price book workspace. So let's head over there. We'll go back to our pricing workbook here. All right, and here we go. So now we have both of our price books associated to our storefront correctly. So we can see our default one, we can see the gold price book, the platinum price book. If we dive into each one of those, we can go into related and see all the information there. And then we can also see our price book entries for all of our products. All right, so now we're over in Jill's Outdoor Adventures account, and you can see that we have a contact name, Jill Jane here. And what we're going to do, just to kind of finish this off today, is we're going to log in as this user here. So you can do that by going over into the contact, clicking log in as user, as long as the person is set up properly. And this basically allows you to kind of emulate that experience as that customer. Because we have 2 sites and we're using the same profile, it's going to give us the prompt to choose which site we actually want to log into. So of course we're going to do the tiny home store here. And once we've logged in, we're going to get to our unbranded site, which we'll fix up here in future videos or sessions. But we'll go over to products for now. And we want to just validate that the products with the prices that we set up for this do show. So we can see that we have our oak doors for $90. We have our feather river doors for $900. And we have our silver kitchen sink for $95. But we're not seeing the American Craftsman product, and we're not seeing the other price for the doors. So that's exactly what we're hoping to see here. So just to wrap up for this session today, what we went over is buyer groups, buyer group members, entitlements, price books, and really how to stitch all that data together and what that really means for your storefront. In the next video, we're going to probably do a little bit shorter one, but talk more about pricing strategy and a little bit about discounts. So look forward to that in the coming days here. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the recording. Give it a like and put a comment in. It really helps boost the video and get the reach out to people who are looking for the content. And feel free to comment about anything that you're interested in hearing about.